Fun fact, the Presbyterians were the first to separate church and state, and the Presbyterian form of government actually inspired the American form of government. Hey guys, welcome back to Kingdom Craft, where I build this big church in Minecraft while I talk about Christianity and spread God's kingdom in Minecraft. So today I'm going to be talking about how we Presbyterians govern ourselves. Now, I've kind of usually not been as interested in this topic as in other theological topics, but given that the name Presbyterian refers to how we govern ourselves, I think I should really care a lot more about it. But when I was doing research for this video, I actually realized why it's a lot more important than I previously thought. So, all churches have some sort of structure of government. The majority of traditional churches have what's called an episcopal government, and it's not just Episcopalians that have this. It's also Catholics, Lutherans, Eastern Orthodox. It's what you're familiar with. It's what you think of as a Catholic government. It's like a hierarchy of bishops and archbishops and other stuff like that. For the Eastern Church, they have like what's called patriarchs. And basically, it's just like a hierarchy. It's a government that functions similar to a monarchy. And because of that, those kinds of churches, the Catholic churches, your Lutheran churches, your Eastern Orthodox churches, have traditionally, there has not been a separation of church and state in those churches. The church and state have historically worked together in those kinds of churches. So that is one model of government that a lot of churches have followed. Another style is basically the opposite. It's a pure democracy. It's called a congregational style of government. Now, this is what you'll see in a lot of Baptist churches, where basically each member of the congregation has one vote, and the congregation as a body just can vote on anything. I've heard one Baptist pastor say, my congregation could theoretically vote me out on any given Sunday, which if I was a pastor, I'd be kind of scared of that. Especially because Baptists emphasize preaching good sermons, so if I was tired that day and preached a bad sermon, the Baptist congregation would be like, yep, you're out. No, I know that wouldn't really happen, but it's funny. It's funny to think about. So there's the final structure of government, which is ours, is called a Presbyterian structure of government. It's called this because the word presby means elder. So basically we're governed by elders who we elect. So it's kind of like an indirect democracy where the congregation does not make the decisions, but the congregation elects the people that do make the decisions. And it's not just that, but all the churches are connected to each other, ideally. I know the Presbyterian denominations have split a lot, but each Presbyterian church is in a local presbytery, which is in a larger regional synod, and the synods are part of a national general assembly. So each Presbyterian denomination has a general assembly and multiple synods and a bunch of presbyteries. Now, this form of government, of sort of a representative democracy, is what actually inspired the United States government, because that's what I'm glad I didn't die. That's what the U.S. government is. The U.S. government is a representative democracy. So that's what the Presbyterian government is. Now, let me talk about why it matters. So, traditionally, there's been this concept of apostolic succession. What the heck is that? So, of course, when Jesus left, he left his apostles in charge of the church. And everyone agrees that, yes, the apostles were indeed in charge of the church. But the question then becomes, okay, after the apostles died, who's in charge then? Is it just like a total free-for-all or what? So, no, it's not a free-for-all. So, there has been a traditional idea that there's like a direct lineage from the apostles, because even though the apostles are dead, the apostles appointed people who appointed people who appointed people, on and on until basically the modern era. And you have multiple church bodies that claim to be a direct lineage from the apostles. So, and the problem is you have multiple churches claiming that they are the one true church descended from the apostles. So the Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and the Oriental Orthodox Church all claim that they are the ones directly descended from the apostles, a direct lineage, and the other churches just sort of broke off from them. Whereas if you look at it objectively, it seems like a split, with each side claiming the other broke off from them and that they're the true church. So, other, like, more high church Protestants, like Anglicans and Lutherans, they do have this concept of apostolic succession, where, you know, one bishop appoints another bishop who appoints another bishop, but they don't believe that there's necessarily one true church body. So they affirm that there could be multiple church bodies that each can have a claim to apostolic succession. Now, the Reformed Presbyterian tradition, we have some version of apostolic succession, but it's a bit different. So we believe that apostolic succession is not necessarily in terms of people, like one person appointing another person, but it's more in terms of the apostolic teachings. That a true church is not necessarily one that has a direct organizational lineage to the apostles, but one that follows the teachings of the apostles. So we would still confess with the Nicene Creed that we believe in one holy Catholic and apostolic church. Catholic meaning just universal, like lowercase c Catholic, not the Roman Catholic Church. And then in even more low church Protestants like Baptists, they would say we don't even need to follow the apostolic teachings. Everything the apostles taught that's necessary for us to know is in the Bible. Now, all Protestants would agree that the apostolic authority rests in the Bible and not in any one organization. But we would say there is still an apostolic tradition, an apostolic traditional interpretation of the Bible that we need to follow. So I talked about the Protestant idea of sola scriptura in one of my earlier videos. It doesn't mean the Bible is our only authority. It means the Bible's our only infallible, perfect authority. So yes, in other words, Presbyterians do have some form of apostolic succession, but it's not like a direct lineage of persons. It's more of a direct lineage of teachings. We would say our teachings are present in the early church, whereas I think Baptists wouldn't really care if their teachings were part of the early church. They're just like, oh, we're just following what the Bible says. So which form of government is the best? Now, I think just like with many issues, in many issues, Presbyterians have like the ideal balance between like high church Catholics and low church Baptists. We're somewhere in the middle. So on the one hand, tradition is important, because every time people have tried to do away with tradition in the church, a whole like Pandora's box of weird teachings gets opened. It's really not a wise thing. So we do need like traditional teachings and sort of an apostolic tradition. At the same time, there are many churches that have started like underground. Think of the underground church in China. A lot of it is not really connected to any like other apostolic church body. Like a lot of those churches really can't claim apostolic succession with like bishops and priests. And yet the Christians in like worshiping underground in China are some of the most devoted followers of Jesus in the world. Generally, whenever the church is persecuted, it makes its followers more devoted because there's a lot more sacrifice in being a Christian. You see Chinese Christians, like whole families, men, women, and children, traveling hundreds of miles to worship in some basement, and you see them like in tears when they receive Bibles from some like Western non-profit organization translated into Chinese, Bibles smuggled basically through illegal borders. My point in saying this is, are we really going to claim that that church is not a true church just because they're not directly descended from, descended in terms of, you know, organizationally descended from the original early church? What I would say is they are a true church as long as they're basically following the teachings of the apostles. By that I mean, you know, agree with the Apostles' Creed, Nicene Creed. If they're part of a Western tradition, then the Athanasian Creed. So yeah, that's how I would see it. So I think Presbyterians always have the best balance of tradition, like not having too much tradition, not having too little tradition, perfect balance. So yeah, I only got like one of those windows done. Basically, I'm making the frame for all these stained glass windows. That's about it for now. That's the end of this series on what Presbyterians believe. So in my next videos, I'm just going to cover some random topics, whatever comes to my mind. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you later.